We're working with Castor again on the rope loop, and then we're gonna take out the halter and work on that a little bit. So my idea here is to get him to straighten out and just target my hand while he's facing me. So he has a hard time with this because he really wants to stand parallel to the gate, and that's like a really ingrained behavior, which is fine. So I want to make this super rewarding as well. I just didn't practice it enough, and so he just thinks that the right answer is either standing parallel to the fence, right or left. See, he wants to go stand parallel. He's like, no, this is what I'm supposed to do, which is fine. It's not a big deal. I just want to pay attention to it, take note of it, and then make the other behavior that I'm asking for really rewarded and highly rewarding for the horse, so that he's like, okay, it's just another one. So it's not going to be punishing him being parallel either way. It's just going to be standing left, standing right, and standing straight in front are all equally super rewarding. So that's what we want here. So I'm going to be really clicking and feeding. So I've already got my other handful. I'm already saying, yeah, like, let's give him another treat and try to really feed quickly so that I don't want to do a lot of chew time because I don't want to give him the opportunity to just like run out of food and give him a pause to where he's going to want to turn and face or side pass up to me. So, and it's probably not everyone's going to have this problem. Castor specifically has this problem, and nobody else does. But this same scenario can happen with just other behaviors in general. So when you're doing clicker training, that can happen really easily. They have one behavior that they find super rewarding, and then they always want to offer it. So I don't want to punish it. I'm just not going to click it. I'm not going to feed it. I'm going to feed and reward the other behavior that I want really highly. So there I just did a little bit of desensitizing with my hand over his neck, so just making sure like I could touch him there. He's fine with my hand going over and him kind of seeing my hand out of the other eye before I take out the rope, because in the previous video you saw that I was doing this with him facing so I'd be on his left side, facing the other side. So now I want to do it while I'm facing straight ahead. You also want to do it while he's facing to the right and I'm on his right side. So just make sure you do all those. I don't do his right side in this video, but it is very important, so don't forget to do that, because I know we tack up on the left side and all that, but there is going to be times where you want to toss a lead rope over from the right side, and I don't want him freaking out. So, but he looks like he hasn't missed a beat here at all. He's doing great. He's putting his face into the rope, and again, I didn't start from where we left off last time. I started with where's my horse at today. So he didn't necessarily need to retarget the rope and start as small as I did last session. We kind of started in the middle, but I didn't go all the way to putting the rope up over his ears immediately. I didn't do that. We're pretty close, but it's really just you paying attention to where your horse is at. He's going to tell you what level he needs to start at every day. And I know it can be really frustrating if you've been working on this for weeks and he needs to start from the beginning. That's just what's going to happen, because you can start from where you think you want to be at, or like really close to the end behavior, but that's just going to put you in a bind later on, because now you have a behavior that's not all the way solid, that they don't find all the way positive and reinforcing, and now there's a little bit of fear or tension in there, and that can explode later on. We really don't want that. So I want everything really solid, step by step, all the way up, so we don't have any of that fear, no tension. We don't have any cracks that we might break apart later on if we have a little bit of a stressor, or there's an outside influence like we're at a show or the wind's blowing or a deer jumped by or whatever. We don't want any of that. So this is going to help that. That's excellent. So even though we didn't start where we ended off yesterday, he's already much further, and we've only repeated that for a little bit. So he again needs something else more reinforcing, because he's like, not gonna work for this hay anymore. That's all right. Just take that as information. It's not a big deal. You can pause the session and go get something else. I've tried to work through this a little bit with Castor, and now he doesn't work the hay anymore, but that's just a couple of your options. That looks awesome. I love how he just stood there the whole time. He didn't move his head up and down. He didn't do anything. He just kind of stood there. He was blinking. He was still moving his ears. He's thinking, but he's not freezing, and he's not getting really tense when that happens. So that looks awesome. And then I'm just kind of trying to pull it off from the side. He got a little tense there, because you can see he stopped chewing. He kind of paused a little bit. He thought that was a little scary. So You can definitely tell the difference in his body language from when it went back up over his ears to when it kind of drug across his neck. So I probably should have started with just like a little bit less rope dragging, maybe like pull like 70% of the rope to this right side, and so then just like that leftover like 40% can come over, or 30 or whatever, so that he's just got less to deal with. It's not fully in half, so that he doesn't get as scared with the rope dragging. This looks better. He's doing pretty good. Again, read your horse. Castor's a fairly confident horse. For Atlas, I wouldn't do that. He needs little tiny baby steps. I think for him, he actually did the lunging whip or the driving whip with the tiny little lash on the end, and that was what we had to work on because he was afraid of that movement of the rope or the tassel going up over, or lash, I guess, over his neck. So it just really needs to be broken down depending on your horse. So they're all individuals. Like we're trying to teach them the same lessons, but I'm not going to go about it exactly the same. It's going to be very similar depending on the horse, but it's not the same. So if we're going to go to the other side, he's caught on at this point. Like he gets it. And I think that first time I accidentally pulled the snap over his neck, and that probably felt weird and sounded weird and was heavy. So probably shouldn't have done that. But he got the rope part just fine because that probably isn't going to really happen in real life, not in a training situation. So I'm just going to break out the leather halter. So I think my original goal was gonna be to put the leather halter and let them wear it for a little bit. I did not end up doing that, but I think that's why I had it out. For some reason, both Mustangs were a little skeptical of the leather halter. I'm not really sure why. I think it had a part to do with it smells different, and then it made like a jingly, like the buckle jingles a little bit. They thought that was weird. They did not generalize the rope halter to the leather halter whatsoever. So I thought that was really interesting. They really had a lot more talking into like getting used to this object than they did the rope halter. So, but you can tell how he looks at it. He's just like, not so sure if I like that there. So I probably should have taken the halter out over the gate there because he keeps staring at it. And he doesn't really want what I'm giving him here. So probably should have taken it over and then found him something that's more reinforcing to eat. He's just kind of like, not that interested. I'm not sure if this right here is he's afraid of the halter. I think a little bit. He really has a lot of attention on there. It's possible the leather smells kind of worrying him a bit. That is possible, but he does relax here a little bit and takes the hay. So that's just something to pay attention to. And my goal is to obviously put the halter on. I again want him to put his nose in there on his own. So I'm kind of starting off with the halter in this kind of weird position here where that buckle, like the crown piece is kind of toward his face. Obviously I can't really put it on from this angle, but it's going to be close. I just want him to get used to it being out there. So he got a little worried. There's another person coming up. That's good. He's targeting it, and that's all he's ready for right now. And in this beginning part, I really found it frustrating that he didn't generalize the rope halter to the leather halter or like the nylon halter. I was like, because this is my first time with Mustangs, so I was like, I didn't realize. I had heard that they didn't generalize well and they paid attention to detail, but I guess I didn't realize it until I actually was there doing it.
Okay. I'll come back in a minute and fill the water.
Okay. So I'm trying to open it up. So it's a little bit scarier here because now you have both sides of his face he can see the halter in, so it's a little bit scarier. But my goal was for just him to put his nose toward like the noseband area. That's good. He's taking a step toward it. I'm gonna reward him for that. That was my goal for this lesson. Because ideally I wanted him to stand parallel and then I could just kind of scoop the halter over his nose, kind of like they do in the chutes when you get them. That was my idea. He's going to touch it again. I wanted him to feel it on his chin. That was good. Because the different sensations are gonna feel weird. So I don't want him to go ahead and try to put his nose in and then feels that leather on his underneath his chin and he's like, oh goodness, that's scary. Because I feel like a lot of them get a little bit worried by that because I can't see right there and it's a sensitive place. So I wanted him to kind of feel that before he went and stuck his nose in right away and then he scares himself in the process and then doesn't want to try anymore. I definitely didn't want that. So I'm just kind of experimenting with how to hold the halter so that he can work on putting his face in it, but not be too scary and not be too hard to hold. So I was trying to work that out. But he's looking for the halter when I take it away, so that's a good sign. He's a little cautious, but interested. That's good. So I probably should have clicked and fed a little bit sooner here. He didn't need to just to hold on it that long. Because you definitely can tell he has a little bit more tension with this halter than he did with the lead rope. So probably even could have had him target it from the other side of the fence. I could have had him just like touching it through the bars. That might have helped too. I mean, this looks pretty good. But I just want to make sure that he is staying nice and confident. I don't want him to lose confidence with new objects. I want him to see new things and know that he's going to be reinforced for investigating them, but he doesn't need to really do it like because he has to, but because he wants to. So it's not because I don't want him to think that he has to go up to touch everything because that's not healthy either. Because horses will come up to touch something and they thought they were ready for it and it moves or it's scarier than they thought and then they jump and get spooked and we don't want any of that. So that is another thing. I don't want them to touch everything they see. I do, but not the first thing that I want. I want them to approach it, I want them to look at it, and then once they feel comfortable, then they can go ahead and touch it. But that's definitely important because a lot of people think that's just what clicker training is oh, I want, you want the horse to touch everything. That's not true. I want them to build up that confidence first. So I probably should have done a little bit more of that with this halter just because of how tense he is. Because you can see he raises his head up a little bit when I bring the halter over. He's got his ears pointed at it. He's really a lot more involved in it than he was the rope. So I feel like it's probably the smell of it. I'm not really sure, but he's being quite good. It's just a little bit more tension than I want. So probably should have clicked and fed that. I'm not really sure. I think I was looking for more of that where he tried to put his face in. So just since he's got a little bit more tension, probably should have clicked a little earlier. It did seem to be okay, so not a big deal, but it might have helped. So I'm just gonna let him hang out, and I tried to kind of go between taking the halter away over the panel and leaving it there, so he could kind of see it. So I'd kind of play with that, see what works best for your horse. But that was good. He's at least putting his nose in between the leather pieces, so it's not just he's touching the outside of it. So he is making some progress. It's going to be kind of slow and kind of boring. But if it's slow and, well, not necessarily slow, but if it's boring, like you're doing something right. So that's good. If you're bored watching it on video, you're doing something right. So most likely in general. But yeah. If I don't want to stick it on his head and he runs around and scares the crap out of himself. Would that be interesting to watch? Yes. Would that be scarring for him? Yes. So, nice and slow. That's what we want to do. So just give him some time, hang out. And you can tell that he's moving his head away too. He didn't do that with the rope. Like he's kind of looking, not necessarily to leave, but he's just kind of moving his face away from the halter and he's reaching a lot more. So with the rope, he really wanted to step up toward it. This one, he's keeping his feet away from it and just touching with his nose. So he's trying, but you can tell he's a little bit more worried when he does that. So again, I definitely should have clicked for this because he is trying. And my idea here is that I'm trying to have him target my hand that's up in the noseband. So I shouldn't have done that. He didn't really understand at all what he was doing because I was too focused on getting his nose in the halter hole, like in the noseband and doing that. And I shouldn't have worried about that too much, especially with him, how much he's reaching. He's showing he's not that comfortable with it. I mean, he is trying a lot, so um, I will definitely give him that. That was really good. I definitely should have given him a little bit more slack though. So don't get too wrapped up in your end goal or what you think they should learn after a certain time. That's just going to slow you down overall. So, and you can do this with the target. That was a good idea. He just had a little bit too much tension for that part right now. And it probably wasn't super clear since I was also holding the halter, so that was probably confusing. But if you want to hold it like in one hand and then you hold like a handheld target at the end, that will work. So I think this was just a little confusing setup. That was great. He really is trying hard. But you can see how he'll lean over and then he brings his head closer to the camera off to his left there. So he moves it even further over. So that's a tell he's got a little tension there. So I definitely should have been feeding a little bit earlier and just letting him work it out a little bit more and not asking for quite so much. But that's important to see versus that last video where he was just working with the rope. There's a definite difference in body language, but it is subtle, but it's important to see. So it's a good example of that. This looks great. Definitely should have clicked that before I had him touch it, because also we get really stuck in like, okay, you have to touch it, you have to go near it. Just looking at it is good in the beginning. Just walking toward that direction is good. Or stretching out their nose toward it is good. All of those things we need to focus on as well because we got to build them up. Like, especially with horses like Castor who are really curious, we're like, oh, well, we can skip these steps because they're already confident about this and this and this, but they might encounter something that they're a lot less confident with. So we just got to be careful, not asking too much. Usually horses can be pretty forgiving, but you don't want to overdo it and scare them. You could ask for a little bit more than you probably should, but you don't ever want to scare them because that's going to be very, very, very hard to fix. That's the hardest thing. So he's putting his nose on the outside of the halter. He's like, I just can't put it in there. It's scary. I get it. Like, it smells weird, makes weird noises. That was actually really excellent. So I'm surprised he gave me that much for how I hadn't been rewarding a lot. So he's doing really great. So I'm happy where I ended. I definitely shouldn't have kept going, and that was a good ending spot for him. Probably should have ended a little bit sooner and asked for a little bit less, but that's all right. But I'm just going to end on him targeting my hand in front because I really want this position where he's standing and facing me to be really good because he really wants to be in that side pass where he's standing parallel to me. So I just want to make sure that this is a really good spot for him and end on that note so he remembers it next time. Just kind of moving my hand slightly differently, but to where he stays in the position of facing me. So, I mean, you can see like throughout his lessons that I changed it up a little bit and we make a little bit of progress every day. They're not too crazy. We're not doing something completely different from the next time, but you can see the pace at which I'm adding things to where he understands and but he's learning something new and not getting bored, but also staying confident. So there's like a fine line there. But overall, he did really well. A little bit scared of the halter, but he'll get there. And he wants to kind of move his shoulder and think about side passing. I'm like, no, let's just do that. There, he figures it out. That was great.